Hey there! I got an early Christmas present from a friend, the Victorinox Hunter Pro Alox. There's been a lot of interest in this knife, so there's already a lot of YouTube videos on it, but I think I've got some things of value to add to the discussion, so let's do a quick unboxing. I'll give you some stats and then my impressions of the knife. So this is the Hunter Pro M Alox. I'm not sure what the M designates, so if anyone knows that, please help me with that. Here on the back is a picture of the knife and the lanyard that it comes with. I'll show you shortly, and then Victorinox's information. So comes in a sleeve, and then it's in a cardboard cradle like this. Underneath the knife is the lanyard. Now this is a piece of paracord, kind of silver in color, and it's wound very tightly. It's very nice. And I suppose, you know, in a survival situation that you could unwind that and get several feet of paracord to help you with something. There's also a little brochure in here on this knife specifically. I won't bother to get that out and go through that right now. The first thing you'll notice about this knife is that it is quite a departure for Victorinox. It's really different. It's big and it's heavy. Now, big and heavy isn't necessarily a bad thing for an outdoors knife. But if you intend to pocket carry it a lot, it could be, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. On the US website, Victorinox's US website, they give the length of this as 136 millimeters, that's 5.4 inches, and that's compares to 130 millimeters for the regular Hunter Pro with the nylon scales that you can get in either red or black, and also 130 millimeters for the Hunter Pro Wood, which has the walnut scales. And I imagine that extra 6 millimeters is attributable to this integrated lanyard hole, which is formed into the spring here. As I mentioned, it's a heavy knife. Victorinox gives the weight as 186 grams, so that's a full 6.6 ounces. And that compares to 161 grams for the regular varieties. The knife retails for about $100, although I've seen it as cheap as $89 here in the US. And that compares to a retail price of $73 for your nylon version and $110 for the Hunter Pro Wood in the walnut scales. Now, Victorinox gives this as a 4-function knife. I think that's stretching reality a little bit. So the blade is the first function, fair enough. The clip is the second function. Here's where it gets a little bit stretchy. The lanyard is the third function, and the lanyard hole is the fourth function. So there are your 4 functions as defined by Victorinox. Let's talk about the construction first, because that's the most notable thing about this knife, or these Alox scales. But one thing that I think makes it heavy is the fact that it has both stainless steel liners and the Alox scales. So that's different than, say, Victorinox's other Alox knives, where the handle is actually the structural component. You know, when they came out with the Pioneer and those varieties, the Alox scales were the structural component and replaced the aluminum liners of the Celador type knives. But here you have both, so that adds to the weight, but obviously it's going to make a very, very strong knife. I think with this type of construction, stainless steel liners and thick aluminum handles all riveted together, you're going to have a pretty bulletproof knife. I don't really see much going wrong with this at all. It's a one-hand opening knife, so here you can see a Spyderco type thumb hole. It opens very deliberately. It's kind of firm. You're not going to be flicking this open. It may loosen up over time, but that's kind of typical Victorinox. It does lock. It's a mid-back lock. The locking mechanism works very well. It's easy to unlock. You can do it up against something with one hand. That's what I like about the mid-back. If it were back here, you wouldn't be able to do that. The lockup is just really tight. I don't have any side-to-side or up or down play. So that's really nice. Now this is called, you know, the Hunter Pro, so it's ostensibly a hunting knife, right? But when I look at that blade, to me that just looks like a bushcraft knife. You know, hunting knives typically have a drop point or a clip point blade, some shape that gives you a little more of a belly for slicing. And here you see we have a spear point blade. Hunting knives, usually for people that really get in there and skin animals, are usually a smaller blade. They like a little more control. Here you've got a 4-inch blade, that's 100 millimeters right on, and that's pretty appropriate for bushcrafting, working with wood. You can also see, very bushcraft-like, you've got a Scandi grind here with a secondary bevel. So I really like the blade shape. You can see here it's swedged down to the point. One thing that surprised me about the knife was how sharp the point is. So that'd be very good for piercing or, drilling wood. And since it's a fairly thick blade to the tip, I think if you exercise some caution, you're not going to be bending or breaking that tip. You can see here that the knife has a bead blasted finish. I've heard some people say this is stonewash. I don't think that's right. Victorinox stone washes their other blades. It's a process of putting it in the big tumbler, with the ceramic pellets and the abrasive. But this actually looks like it was blasted with glass beads. There you can see the Victorinox logo and name stamped into the blade. They've done that very well. And on the other side, it simply says Swiss made. There are no other markings on the blade. There are no tang stamps. I've heard some people describe this as made out of Victorinox's run-of-the-mill steel. That's not really accurate. Victorinox uses a steel X55 CR MO14 on the regular pocket knives. I think that's kind of a proprietary blend for Victorinox. I think they buy it from Germany, but it's very much like a 440A or a 440B. These knives use 440C steel, and that's a higher carbon steel. It's a little better steel. It's kind of an upper mid-range steel, and it's going to be much better, I think, for heavier duty use. It's hardened to a Rockwell hardness of 56. As I mentioned, the blade's fairly thick. It's got some jimping here on the back in just the right spot. And overall, I really like the look of it. The Spyderco hole is big enough to get the job done, but it's not so big that it kind of ruins the geometry of the blade. As far as the ergonomics of the knife, I think it's comfortable enough in the hand. It's a little thin, and of course it's hard, but it does have these big, generous finger grooves. I know some people don't like finger grooves because their hands may be very large or small or something, but I think these are generous enough they'll fit a wide variety of hand sizes. And as I said, the jimping seems, and the bump up for the hole seems to be just right. I think it's pretty grippy because of the checkering that's stamped into the Alox handles. Could be a little bit of a problem when it's wet. Also, if you do prolonged heavy work with wood, it may be a little less comfortable than, say, the regular variety of the Hunter Pro, which has bigger cheeks, more comfortable handle. Either the nylon or the wood would probably be the way you wanted to go if you were going to do some serious bushcrafting. But then you lose the clip and you've got to carry it in a sheath. Now the clip is removable. You can actually put the knife, the tip up against a table or something, give it a whack down and it'll pop out. But it's not reversible. And so it's just, right hand side only, and it is tip up. But they've got that right because I think that's just proper for a one-hand opening knife. It ought to be tip up. Carryability, it is kind of big, it's kind of heavy, but I've been carrying it for a while, and it's thin enough where you really don't notice it in your pocket. And for sure, there's plenty of folders that are this big or bigger that have clips that are meant for pocket carry. The only time I really notice it is when I'm sitting or crouching. Because of its length, 5.5 inches approximately, it's going to dig into your leg some. The only other one thing I want to mention is just the lock. I said the lock really works well. Some people I've read in some reviews that they complain that the lock failed when they were batoning wood. Personally, I would never baton wood with a folding knife. And if I just had to, I think the proper way to do it is like this, right? Where you fold the knife and put it on your piece and bang on it that way so you're not putting pressure on the pivot or the spring or the lock. Better yet, carve a wooden wedge and use the wooden wedge to baton with. Now, being a locking knife and having a blade that is 4 inches long, this is obviously going to be illegal to carry in a lot of countries. And it's going to be illegal to carry in some U.S. cities, so just bear that in mind before you buy it. It's really primarily designed to be used in the out of doors. So let's do a quick size comparison. Here is the Hunter Pro against the Benchmade North Fork Folder, which is a much smaller knife, as you can see. And here you see we have drop point blade with a little more of a belly for skinning. And as I mentioned, you know, it's some people prefer that smaller blade for hunting knives. Here it is up against Victorinox's other large frame knife, the Ranger Wood 55. And you can see it's about the same size, but there's a huge difference in the blades. And then finally, here it is up against Victorinox's other famous Alox knife, the Pioneer, which just looks downright puny compared to that knife. So that's probably going to give you the best indication of this size, knife's size. And finally, I entitled my video Heavy Duty Swiss Precision. Obviously this knife is built very strongly, but I just want you to take a look for a minute at the fit and finish of this knife. The edge, the stampings. A couple of things that really impressed me were just how straight and true and clean the checkering was in the Alox scales, how beautifully spun the rivets were. There's the Victorinox logo. It's clear and well executed. Everything lines up and is flush just like it should be. I think the clip is just gorgeous. So there you have the Victorinox Hunter Pro Alox Heavy Duty Swiss Precision. Thanks for watching.